I felt really strongly about it. Like, I was like, yeah, we should look at this. I think we can do it. And the next night we came home from work, we, put a bunch of numbers in the spreadsheet, ran them like 3 times. And I was like, I think I'm going to do this. When you step out on your purpose, you won't be afraid, because that's what God has for you. But you need to be open to that and understand that and pray that you hear that when he speaks to you. And it was just this whole thing about it. I think like literally 3 days later, I put in my notice at work. I just quit my job.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 174 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today, our guest is Ashley Rouse, who is the owner and founder of Trade Street Jam Co. After years of working in the culinary industry, Ashley is going to discuss why she decided to take the full-time leap into entrepreneurship. And although she didn't have a perfect plan, she knew she had a purpose and a calling that she needed to trust in. So in this episode, Ashley shares what she's doing now to put her faith into practice and build her company legacy. And let's talk about the company a little bit more. So Trade Street Jam Co. uses locally sourced produce for their vegan, low-sugar jams and can be used to make craft cocktails, glazes, salad dressings, baked goods, roasted meats, veggies, and much, much more. And what I love about Ashley's story is that she's going to open up about her culinary dream driving journey and how she's used her passion for food to inspire her to push her culinary limits and dedicate her company to pursuing unconventional flavors and uses. Some of the other things that we discuss in this episode include the challenges that she's faced along the way, what keeps her going, fighting the need to be perfect, and the key to a successful business partnership, especially if it's with your spouse. And guess what? We teamed up to do a giveaway. So we're going to be giving away a mini jam of Trade Street Jam Co.'s strawberry, chipotle, and fig jam, as well as a sweet potato biscuit mix. So if you're interested, if your taste buds are heightened right now, make sure to go to dreamsanddrive.com/win. That's dreamsanddrive.com/win to enter. And also make sure if you guys are inspired by this episode that you're sharing it on social media. I love it when you guys are tagging us. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. And if you haven't gotten your Dreams and Drive gear, there still is time. The shop is still open. You can grab a Dreams and Drive t-shirt, crew neck sweatshirt, or a hoodie by going to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. All right, let's get ready to hear more about Ashley's culinary creations. Are you ready? All right, so let's learn all about Ashley's culinary creations. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hi, Ashley. Welcome to this episode of Dreams and Drive. How's your day going so far?
It's good. It's good. It's day 2 of me being an entrepreneur and being at home. So it's kind of different, but it's good.
Oh, we will definitely talk about that later in the episode. I'm trying to remember how we even got acquainted. It was through Jeff Belizaire. Do you know him?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yep.
Yes. Jeff and Kalisa were actually episode 32 guests way back when the podcast launched in 2016. And he's always sending me recommendations and stuff. So I think he sent me your email that you must have sent to your personal network announcing that you were going to be quitting your job. And he was like, Raina, you gotta interview her. So now we're here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. So I like to get the interviews started by going back in time, right? I really feel like it's so important for us to reflect on who we were as children and what was inspiring us back then. So if we had to go back to 8-year-old, 9-year-old Ashley, what was life like for you? What was captivating you? What was inspiring you?
I would definitely say cooking, baking, and food in general.
Okay.
I know across cultures, food is something that brings people together and families. And it was definitely the case for my family. I grew up in a single parent household and I'm an only child. So it was always just me and my mom. and we moved around a lot, but we spent a lot of time driving back and forth to Chicago, which is where I'm originally from. And when we did, there was always like food to welcome us. My grandfather was a really good cook growing up. My mom's a great cook. So I feel like food has always kind of been at the forefront and at the center of me and who I am.
What were some of your favorite dishes to make back then?
I feel like back then it was more about eating than it was making it.
Right.
But I always looked forward to like just like simple things that are probably staples, especially like in the Black community. Like my grandfather made really, really good collard greens. And he made really, really good cheese grits for breakfast in the morning. So those were like some of my favorite things I always had him make for me.
So, as a young adult, like going into high school, was food still on your mind? Was that something you saw yourself making a career out of?
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember the exact, age where I kind of was like, okay, this is a career, but, I know like just in high school, I knew I was always cooking, for my mom. She kind of forced my hand at it. 'Cause like I said, it was just me and her. So, when she got home, she expected that I would have started dinner. But it was something that I enjoyed. It wasn't something that, I didn't like to do. But I do know in high school, maybe around junior year, we had those classes where you could kind of dabble in whatever career. So there was like automotive and there was like beauty school classes and things like that. And they had like a culinary one. And I remember taking it and loving it, and telling the teacher like, yeah, I think I'm going to go to culinary school. And I remember how excited she was, and everybody really, I think back then, I mean, it's not like it was that long ago, but back then, it was a new thing. It wasn't as like, common as it is today. So, people were just like, wow, like that's so cool. You know what you want to do, you're going to go be a chef somewhere. So, I definitely remember that.
Yeah, that is, I'm trying to think, like, I know in my family, the only acceptable career would be like a doctor, lawyer, nurse, right? I'm Caribbean, so my parents were very like, culinary school, first they would say, why do you have to go to school to learn how to cook, right? And then they'd be like, yeah, what can you do with that? Will you make money? Like, were your parents or was your mom also supportive of you too?
Yeah, my mom's been pretty liberal from the beginning. Okay. She was very supportive. I think she was excited to see me kind of say like, this is what I want to do and go for it. And I know she's never been where I've always been like a smart kid. I always had like straight A's. I was always in honor classes, mainly because she, wouldn't have it any other way. Mm-hmm. I'd be grounded if I, got anything lower than a B or something. So, I used to get really good grades. So I think for her, she was just always really realistic. Like, hey, if you do it and you don't like it, then go do something else.
Well, I like that, being realistic. So let's be realistic. You went to Johnson & Wales and you got a degree in food. Was it food management or food?
Yeah, so I have an associate's degree in culinary and a bachelor's degree in food and restaurant management.
All right. So coming out of school, did you feel like it was worth it? Were you able to, I guess, enter the culinary world smoothly?
Oh, yeah, that was not a problem. I mean, yeah, I have a culinary degree. I want to work in a kitchen somewhere. Like, yeah, it's easy. But like with anything, you start, at the bottom. It's not like you come out and you're a chef. A lot of people don't understand, they're like, oh, you're an executive chef somewhere. I mean, just like anything, you don't come out of law school and you're like a top lawyer at the firm. You kind of start off like an entry level. So I started off working at restaurants. I worked at like a Spanish tapas restaurant for, I think, a year or two, I really learned a lot there. And then I worked at hotels for a while. I worked at the Westin. I worked at the Ritz-Carlton. So you're really kind of just like working your way up in the kitchen and kind of just getting that experience. I learned later in my career, a few years, I guess, into my career, that it's not really about the culinary school degree. It's more about the experience that you have. And I feel like that's probably similar with other degrees as well. But that's just like on paper, you still don't know anything. You still don't know anything until you actually do it.
That is so true. I've always wondered because I'm not someone who, as I said earlier, like I'm not like a natural, let's say, I'm a natural eater, right? I love food, but when it comes to cooking, I'm not a natural. Like, what were some of the skills that you realized you had to learn once you actually got into the kitchen in the restaurants and working at the hotels? Like, what were those hard skills that you were learning that were invaluable at that time?
I mean, honestly, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're in school, you learn like temperatures and things like that. Like you learn how to not kill people when you cook chicken. And you kind of just learn your way around a kitchen. You learn how to use industrial size equipment that you wouldn't have at home. And you just learn like basic kind of skills. But when you get into a restaurant, you're learning time management. It's just totally different. It's very fast paced. Whereas before, maybe in school, like you had a little bit more time when you were like putting together a dish, or you'd have 2 hours and put together this dish, and then the teacher tastes it and says how it is. But at a restaurant, it's like, no, you have like 10 to 12 minutes, prepare this dish, taste it, make sure it's good, and then it goes out to the customer. So you're really learning to kind of speed up everything, without losing flavor or accuracy or anything like that.
During this time, was there ever a moment where you doubted that this was what you wanted to do with the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be crazy. When people tell me stuff like that, like they don't doubt it, I'm just like, don't talk to me.
You're a liar. You're a liar.
Yeah, you're a liar. You're a liar. Like, who goes through their lives? I mean, of course, there's people, like if you talk to Beyonce, she'll be like, oh, since I was 8, I always wanted to sing. Like, that's great. But, I think that's more rare. Like people always doubt what they're doing or think about changing careers. I think there was a point where I didn't realize how many different things I could do with my degree. So I was like, like, do I want to work in the kitchen forever? Working in a kitchen is tough work. Like, don't let anybody tell you that it's all like sunshine and rainbows. It's really tough. It's physically exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. And I think I got to a point where I was just like, is this what I want to do forever? And I remember my mom buying me this book, and it was like 101 things you can do like with a culinary degree. And it just totally opened my eyes. Like it was, anything from like journalism and blogging to like, creating a podcast or like a radio station, or, I mean, there's so many things. And I was like, what? You can do that with a food degree? So it really just kind of opened my eyes, and I was like back on track. Like I was like, all right, I'm good. Like no matter what, I love food. So this degree will get me somewhere in the food industry.
So what did you decide to do next? I know you kind of shift to corporate, right? Working at Condé Nast.
It's still food service. So, I was working at the Ritz-Carlton. I was working like literally, it was some event. I think it was CIAA, if you've ever heard of that, in Charlotte. And it's like this huge event, and it's like a tournament, but people really just come out to like hang out and be seen. And people were coming to the Ritz-Carlton getting cocktails, and I think I must have worked like 16, 17 hours per day for like 3 days straight. And
wow.
I remember on the third day, I think my schedule was over at like 10 o'clock. So it was like maybe midnight, 12:30. And I'm like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. It's already 2 hours past my shift. I'm exhausted. So I just left. So, and I remember like, getting in trouble for that. Like everyone was like, oh, she just left. And I never understood, because I'm like, my schedule said 10 o'clock. Right. So I get home, I lay on the bed, I like take off my pants, and both of my ankles are the size of softballs. And so I like called was my boyfriend at the time, my husband now, but I'm like, babe, come look at this. And he's like, oh man, okay, we need to go to the hospital. So we went to the emergency room, and it turns out I had a fracture in both ankles.
From just being on your feet all day?
All day, but like for years. And I'm like, I don't know, 25 or something at the time. And I'm like, what the heck? So I had to wear like a boot. I had to be off work for 6 weeks. It was bad. It was bad news. And I knew at that point, I was like, I'm never going back there. I'm never going back. So I had talked to a friend who also worked in the kitchen with me, and he kind of pointed me in the direction of Compass Group, which is it's like the biggest food service provider in the world. It's a huge company. They do like arenas, hospitals, schools, corporate dining, everything. So I went and interviewed with them, and I got an executive chef role. And so it was totally different. Like I had an office, I could sit, I could be in charge of some things. So I managed.
Were you still in North Carolina at this time?
I was. I was
Okay.
still in North Carolina. And I was just so happy to be like a boss, you know, like I had been just like an hourly associate for so long. It was so nice to just have my own office and make my own decisions. But it was still really, really tough. Like it was just a lot of responsibility. And at that point, I had thought maybe I can go move to the front of the house. So there's back in front of the house. Back of the house is all the kitchen and the cooking. Front of the house is dealing with customers, marketing, things like that. And so I wanted to switch to the front of the house. Around that same time, my boyfriend wanted to move to Connecticut. He wanted to work with the NBA. We decided to move to Connecticut, and I got a position with the same company, but in the front of the house. And that's when I really started to see things change. So that was the last role I had before I left. And so it wasn't really corporate. It was still food related. I still helped with menus and was just very heavily involved in the food. But I didn't have to actually be in the back preparing the food.
Was there anything you noticed about like you as an individual and your personal strengths as you made that transition from being an hourly associate to, you know, being on staff in the executive chef position?
I mean, I really realized I could handle a lot more than I probably knew. If someone told me, oh, you can handle that in advance, I would have been like, no, I probably can't. But it really just looking back, it just helped me understand how strong I am. Like I couldn't go back to working in the kitchen. You know, when we go in the kitchen and make jams, it's exhausting. And I'm like, how did I do this day in and day out? And also just kind of taught me about my like emotional strength. Because I feel like I got kind of beat up over the years, you know, by peers, by employees. So it really just taught me overall my strength and my resilience.
I was watching this YouTube documentary. Like, I am a YouTube documentary girl. Like, you can go down a YouTube, like, black hole of documentaries, right? And it was about, I think it was one of those, like, food magazines, and they were doing a feature on this black woman who was, I don't want to get the terminology wrong. I think she was a sous chef. Like, she was like a chef in a very fancy kitchen, but she wasn't the main chef. I don't know what you call it, right?
Yeah.
But she was just talking about how, number one, her being a black woman in such an environment was very difficult, and just being a woman in general. How did you navigate those parts of your identity as you were building your career as well?
I don't think I really ever looked at it that way.
Okay.
I think I have a very strong personality. Anybody listening that knows me is probably laughing. I'm very, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, like if I have made up my mind, like this is what I'm going to do, like you can't stop me. And if you try, you're probably going to get ran over in the process. You know, for me, I never looked at it as like, man, I'm black and I'm a woman, I got to push. For me, it was more like, I got to push because this is what I'm doing. It didn't matter that I was black or a woman. Now, I'm sure other people looked at me and probably said, who does this black girl think she is? For me, it just, you know, it wasn't a handicap to me, even though it may have been. I never looked at it that way. But also growing up, I mean, my mom has always been super strong. She's always been like the first black woman in her company to be a VP or to, you know, do this or that. And so I've always looked at it as like, oh yeah, like that's what you do.
Yeah, and they say obstacles are only obstacles if you see them, right? Because some people might not even, like, you know, what I see as an obstacle, it may not even exist in your path, right? Because you don't actually see it and view it as that. But we're talking about all this stuff. We're talking about building. When did Trade Street Jam Company come about? Like, when did you get the idea for that?
So the idea came many years ago when I was in North Carolina. I lived on Trade Street. And I kind of just, I had all this creativity, all this energy that I wanted to put into different things. And I had a friend who was kind of a mentor. She must have been probably maybe like 20 years older than me, but she would always talk to me and kind of mentor me through things. And at that time, I kind of was like, hey, I love doing like canning, like making pickles and, things like that, condiment sauces. I love that. So I kind of just was like, hey, I want to make jam. Like it would be really cool. And my friend was like, yeah, that would be a great idea. So I started writing all these like crazy flavor combinations. And I think I just woke up one day and I was like, it should be called Trade Street Jam. And she was like, yeah, I love that name. And so I just wrote it down in a notebook. Actually, around that time, I had started another business that wasn't in the food industry. So that's kind of what I was focusing on at the time. And then I think once we moved out here to Brooklyn about 3 years ago now, I was like, hey, if I got to revisit that. Like I was looking through that notebook. I'm like, I should revisit this. It's Brooklyn. If you can do anything, you can do it in New York. So that's kind of how I felt about that.
Right. Concrete jungles where dreams are made of, right?
Yeah,
are made
exactly.
from. So like, what was take us through that process of you revisiting it and then figuring out that you can make a business out of it, right? Because sometimes we have ideas, but we aren't necessarily so eager to take it to market. When did you start selling it? And like, what did it feel like to start that process?
Well, what did it feel like? I don't know. And I tell you that because, my husband always says like, take time to just celebrate the small wins and kind of realize where you're at. And so that's a concept that I'm learning. So I don't really remember being in that moment and saying, how does this feel? Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. You kind of, cause you even just said before, like you're somebody where like once you're committed to the goal, you're working towards it. So it's kind of like a blur, right?
Yeah. Like I just was like, this is what I'm going to do. And I did it. I remember, so it started small, obviously, like I just would come up with a flavor and then I would make it at home and I would make as many jars as I could of that flavor. So I think at the time I was making like 30 jars of a flavor. And then I would post it on like Facebook and like say, oh, hey, like this is what I've got. Like you guys should try. And then I would get a ton of people, responding, like people that I know, people I grew up with, colleagues, like friends of my mom's. People would just reach out and say that they were interested. And so I would like pack it up and ship it to them. And then that's kind of like how it started. And then after that, I was like, well, maybe I should do some of these like cool markets. Like we had spent time like walking around Brooklyn and Manhattan, and they have all these really cool like craft fairs and things like that. So I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. What does it take to get into that? I do remember thinking, I don't know if I'm, ready to do a market, which is funny because now I do a million of them. So I looked it up, applied. I think it was Artisan Fleas was my first market in Williamsburg. And then just like made as many jams as I could and went in there, and sold it. And then I did spend a lot of time walking around talking to other business owners, because it's a really strong community. And then there's like a ton of Black business owners. So obviously I like reached out to them and then also like visually just looked at their setup. Cause that's important too, like visually how your brand is perceived. So just was really like taking in a lot of my environment.
In those early days, do you remember like a big challenge that you came across and how did you work through that?
A big challenge in the early days. I mean, honestly, I think in the early days, everything was a challenge.
Like what?
Keeping up with inventory, so we had this concept initially that was, we did like small runs of a flavor. And then once it ran out, we didn't bring the flavor back so that it was always like changing. So, I mean, over time realizing how ridiculous that was.
people ever mad at you like, listen, girl, I want that flavor again.
They were. Yeah, of course they were. But there was also people who were like, that's so cool. Like you're always innovating. Like, I can't wait to see what's next. Like people were into the concept. That wasn't the issue. It was just that that's not sustainable. Like it's just not how a business is run. Like, I don't know if there's any business that changes something every single time. I don't know. That's a lot, So just trying to understand, coming to that point of where it's like, okay, that's not going to work. Trying to find space in our apartment to
so you were
make
doing
it.
all of this at home? You didn't have like a commercial kitchen yet?
No, my God, no.
Okay.
No. For a long time, I did it out of my apartment, which you can do. You know, you're not supposed to sell online if you do that, but you can sell at like craft fairs and farmers markets if you do that. So I did that a long time. And then, you know, a challenge was trying to scale even a little bit. Like if I said, oh, okay, maybe instead of 30 jars, I should do like 50 jars. But having the equipment in my house to do that, and then I can only fit so much on the stove. So, I mean, everything at that time was a challenge, honestly.
How were you sourcing like the fruits and doing that part of the business? Because I know like that's very important to what Trade Street Jam Company is, right? Like you don't have a lot of sugar in your jams, and you are selling a premium product. So how did you make sure you were getting the best that you could get, the best ingredients?
So I definitely went to a lot of farmers markets, because it was important for me to use local products as much as possible as well, just to support the community. I spent a lot of time just going around to different markets and like cost comparing. And that's mainly where we got the stuff. We would go to like some grocery stores, which is funny, even me saying it out loud. Like I could never do that. I could never do that today. But yeah, we literally just went around and tried to source it from different places and compare the quality and the price.
Were you also very mindful about your business margins? Because I know in the food business, right, margins are very important. So like, how did you come up with your pricing, especially in the beginning?
I think in the beginning, I wasn't as knowledgeable about it. So you kind of have your like, there's like two sides of the brain, right? And there's like the creative side and then there's the analytical side. And so like my husband's the analytical side and he's like, what are your margins? And at the time I'm like, what's a margin? I'm just going to make this jam. But I learned very quickly to put it into a spreadsheet and cost it out. I did a lot of research for other brands. So I think there was a week where I just went online and ordered every premium jam that I could find, and followed them on Instagram. And just really kind of got a feeling and understanding of what other brands were doing. A lot of them were like Brooklyn brands, that would be like direct competition. But even just across the country, you know, there's a really great jam brand out in Seattle. And I'm still friends with her today because we just communicate a lot regarding what we're both doing. And I feel like that transparency is huge. And so it really helped. But I just ordered a bunch of different products, looked at their pricing, looked at their packaging, tasted it, and kind of tried to position myself around that. So
what was the positioning that you and your husband came up with? Like, what was the thing that you guys did with your jam that nobody else was doing?
So for me, the first thing I thought of was like, these flavors have to be different. Like I went to culinary school. I know that a lot of things I come up with, people that, let's say, don't have that type of culinary background are always like, wow, like, that's crazy. What is that? Right. And for me, it's kind of normal. So it's like, man, but that's who my demographic will be. People that probably aren't chefs.
Like
so
me.
It's great. That's a niche. And so if I can reach out to these people by creating this crazy flavor that they've never heard of, then I'm going to do that. So my number one thing was just creating flavors that you don't see, you know. You won't find just like a strawberry or just a plain blueberry. We're all about just like adding funky spices and peppers and things like that into the jams. And then the next thing I thought was I gotta just use as little amount of sugar as possible. Obviously for health reasons, obviously Black people tend to get diabetes, and just people in general, Americans in general, always overweight. And I just thought, if I'm not helping in some way, what is the point of me doing this? I wrote these recipes that just had like little to no sugar in them. And I figured if I continue to get this really good produce that's in season, I won't have to worry about the taste. I won't have to compromise. So the sugar content was the next biggest thing.
No, and I feel like what I love about, I haven't tasted any of your jams yet, but what I love about just the experience that you have online is that I learned that you can have like jams and cocktails. There's different ways for us to eat jam. And I feel like that's something that I never knew before, right? But by going to your Instagram and going to your site and seeing the different recipes, it kind of opened up my food palette, so to say.
So, and that's kind of the third pillar of everything, was that we our whole mission is to introduce the world to a concept bigger than jam on toast. So, we have everyone who just wants it on biscuits and toast and things like that and bread. Totally fine. But if you buy this 9-ounce jar of jam and you use a third of it on biscuits and now you're like, now what? It may go to waste, right? But if you understand that you can make a salad dressing or roasted meats or vegetables or mix it into that cocktail, now you don't feel like you've bought a jam, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, a jam, and it is a premium product. So they'll say, oh, that's how much it costs for that one jar of jam. Well, it's more like a sauce, a condiment, something you can use with anything. And once they realize that, they become more apt to the idea of buying it. And they get excited. They buy more than one. So it's really important to us on our Instagram and on our website to just really show different recipes and just get people excited and involved.
Do you think that also has been a key to your growth as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, how many people are into jam? Like how many people are just like, oh, I just love jam so much. I definitely, right. I mean, I definitely get people who just come up to me and they go, I love jam. And I'm like, great, then you're here. You're going to love this. But there's so many more people who come up, like when we're at markets, they sample and they're like, great, that was delicious, but okay. And I'm like, do you make cocktails? And they're like, oh, wait, now you're talking. I'm like, you can stir this into a glass of champagne and it's like replaces your mimosa on Sunday morning. Like you can mix this with whiskey. Our kiwi goes great in a mojito. You got to kind of pull on people's heartstrings in different areas. And so, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely a part of our growth is just kind of expanding that knowledge for people.
And something that I'm hearing too is that I feel like you have a very clear sense of who your target customer is, right? And how they're already experiencing their life. Because if you didn't have that information, you wouldn't be able to know how to position the products to them, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've learned it over time. I didn't have all the answers early on. I still don't have a lot of the answers. But no, we learned it. So who we thought our demographic would be in the beginning was the complete opposite of who it ended up being. So we started off vending at Artisan Fleas in Williamsburg because Williamsburg is like the coolest, trendiest neighborhood you can go to. And we're like young hipsters. And so we thought our demographic is young hipsters. So we started kind of marketing to them. And we realized over time that the young hipsters weren't necessarily cooking at home at all. So if you're not cooking at all, you may not be so apt to buy this, right? And then we found out that a lot of the like young, cool hipsters were coming out just because they wanted this shareable moment. So they wanted to be at Artisan Fleas just to take a photo and story it or Instagram and say, hey, I'm at Artisan Fleas. Like, look at all this cool vintage and this food. Like, look where I'm out and about, right? But they weren't necessarily purchasing. We kind of quickly learned, and I'm glad we did that market. I would never take that back, but that taught us like, hey, maybe this is not who we need to reach out to. But then when we started going, like to the Upper West Side or just targeting like where you find families, like, or, Park Slope or something like that, where it's more like 30, 40 somethings and they have a kid or two, and they eat in a lot rather than eating out. Or they like to have fun. They like to have dinner parties and drink and impress their friends through food. Then we really kind of latched onto something.
So when was the moment where you realized that I could do this full time, or this could be a lot bigger if I had more time to devote to it?
So those are two separate things. So This could be a lot bigger if I had more time to devote to it. That probably happened like a year ago. But the time where I realized this could be full time, that probably happened about a month ago.
Okay. Wow. So while you made that decision, you thought about it and you went towards it really quickly.
Yeah. So there's kind of a story behind it.
Okay.
So I've known for a while now, like, man, like if I had more time, I could make this bigger. I never was like, oh, this can be this like worldwide brand, but I was just like, I can make more money doing this if I wasn't all the time at work, 9 to 6. But when I thought about the idea of quitting, it just was so daunting to me because it's so expensive in Brooklyn. And I just was like, I couldn't wrap my head around the concept of being able to provide for my husband. Even though he's the provider, it's just, I still have to provide for him, you know? And I just really couldn't grasp that concept.
Meaning like financially or just in all aspects of the word provide?
Probably in all aspects of the word. But yes, financially, I couldn't understand the concept of me quitting and maybe not bringing in income and him having to take the burden of the bills and everything.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
So, you know, for me, it just was like, nope. Every time we brought it up, we talked about it. I'm just like, nope, I don't see it. He was very encouraging. You know, he was the one that was like, I think you should do it. Like, let's put down the numbers. Let's figure it out. But I was just so afraid the whole time. And I didn't realize that it was me being afraid. I thought I was just being smart. But looking back, I was just literally scared shitless. But literally, I think maybe 2 months ago, I was at this event. I went to do this panel discussion a friend of mine wanted me to do for him. I didn't want to do it. I was like dreading doing it, but I was like, okay, I'm going to do it for him. So I went to this panel. It was held here in Brooklyn. There was all these like entrepreneurs or people who kind of had like taken this leap and kind of stepped out and done their own thing. And we were sitting there talking, having conversations. And this guy in the audience like raises his hand and he's like shaking his hand wildly, like while we're like speaking during the panel. So we're all kind of looking like, what the hell? Like, okay, go ahead. Like speak. You clearly have something to say. Mm-hmm. So we like stop and we're like, go ahead. And he just goes on for like 2 minutes straight and just, he says, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt, but something higher is telling me that I have to say this right now. And he just went on to say that, like, when you step out on your purpose, you won't be afraid because that's what God has for you. But you need to be open to that and understand that and pray that you hear that when he speaks to you. And it was just this whole thing about it. And when he was done, everyone was like in dead silence. And you could tell everyone was moved by it in some form or fashion. And that night in the car, driving home with my husband, you know, I look at him and I'm like, maybe we need to look at this again, like run the numbers again and see if I can do this. And I remember when I said it, I wasn't really afraid anymore. And it was the weirdest experience. I mean, I know it sounds, you know, kind of crazy, but every time I had talked about it before, I had been so fearful, so fearful. For whatever reason, when I said it this time, I felt really strongly about it. Like I was like, yeah, we should look at this. I think we can do it. And the next night we came home from work, we, you know, put a bunch of numbers in the spreadsheet, ran them like 3 times, talked about it. And I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And he's like, yeah, you should. And I was not afraid. And I thought it was so strange that I wasn't scared. I just remembered this guy saying that, like, when you walk in your purpose, you won't be fearful. Like, that's not something that God has for you. Fear is not, it doesn't come from him. So, I think like literally 3 days later, I put in my notice at work.
Wow, that is such an amazing, there's so much to say right here, right? Like you weren't going to do the event, right? And imagine if you had never went to it, right? Imagine if your friend, you know, he didn't convince you, or you decided you weren't going to do it. Maybe you wouldn't have had that message, and maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now, right? Like it seems like everything was in divine alignment in order for you to be where you are today.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, if I didn't go to that event, I don't think I would have quit. I still would have been too afraid. And I had been, you know, we're all kind of in this space where we're trying to walk in our purpose, right? Or understand what our purpose is. And my husband has been there before. He's like, oh, I know my purpose. And I was always like, how do you know your purpose? I don't know mine. Like,
I wonder that too, right? Like, how are some people so confident with it while other people, like, it's a lifelong struggle?
That's what I mean. And I was like, you know, I'm cool with God, but y'all are like really cool. Like y'all are like texting each other.
Let me in.
Like and he was like, you know, listen, keep praying, keep asking him to show you, and keep asking him that you will be aware when he shows you, that you'll be open and receptive, you know, that you won't try to fight it. And so I had spent months, I think more than that, probably this whole year, I've really tried to strengthen my relationship with God on a deeper level. And I think finally things are becoming so clear. I think after that, like I said, that fear wasn't there, and I was very aware, and I was able to say, why am I not afraid? Like, to me, there's no other answer except for that, this like divine intervention. Like, why am I not afraid anymore? Because he wants me to do this. And then literally the last week before I quit, which was just a week ago, I got a feature in Bon Appetit magazine, which I worked at Condé with Bon Appetit for 3 years.
Wow.
Never really had anything, right? But
did they know you were doing it? Like, did they know that you had this side hustle?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I did have some friends there. So
okay.
I did like talk to them. I think I gave them some samples once. And kind of tried to like, finesse my way in, but, but I never really got anything huge from it. And I just thought it was interesting that I had worked there 3 years. And then this last week before I quit my job, they featured me on their website. And I think like 2 or 3 days before I quit, I got like 200 orders overnight.
Wait, what?
Yeah. From the article. And then that's not even it. They sent out a newsletter. And so I didn't see it because I wasn't signed up for the newsletter. So I went back to the girl who wrote the article. I said, hey, can you forward me the newsletter? And because I heard I got some emails that were like, oh, we heard about you in the newsletter. We're so excited. And so she sent it to me, and the entire newsletter was about me and the jam.
Just you? Like, they had your story in there as well?
Just me. I thought the newsletter would be like a bunch of different things. And then like maybe I was at the bottom. The whole newsletter was about my company. So that's where all these orders came from. And then I had even asked her early on, like, hey, can you guys feature me on the social? And she was like, oh, probably not. Like, they kind of have their own way of doing things. And then 2 days later, they posted me on their social.
What?
So
if that is not God, like, what?
That's what I mean. I mean, this could have happened at any point, right? At any point in the years that I've been doing this for 3 years. But he waited because he knew I wasn't ready. And I respect that more than anything, because if he had done this a year ago, I don't know what I would have done. I don't get a ton of days off work. I would have come home every night and been scrambling. I was scrambling with the time off to get these orders out, but it all just like fit together. I would not have had this time to take care of these emails, these orders, if I had still been like in the thick of things with my job. And so it was crazy the way the timing was.
How are you responding to all of like the traction and the traffic now? Like, do you have a plan yet, or are you still just trying to work through it and see what happens next?
Both.
That's how life is, right? Like, you gotta work through it.
Yeah, I have a plan, and I'm also just working through it as it comes. I mean, things are kind of coming together. So I knocked out all the orders. Again, by the grace of God, I had enough product and inventory to fulfill all the orders, which is another thing that I just feel like I never have that much product. But I just happened to be like, let me make sure I have like enough product. And then I get all these orders, and I was able to fulfill every single order. Like, if that's not God, I'm telling you. So that is taken care of. But now I'm working on restocking everything. So I'm pretty much sold out of every single thing right now.
Wow. That's a good problem to have, though, right? Because now
it is a good problem.
Now you can assess how you need to restock and what you want to like shift or how much, because you never know. Because once one company features you, right, the next company's like, listen, I don't want to be, they can't have all the shine, and I'm sure by the time this episode airs, you'll probably have a few more features as well. I can just feel it.
I appreciate that. And I think you're right, though. I think, already I've had people reach out from other like magazines and other sites that have said, hey, I saw you on Bon App. Like, we'd love to feature you. So I feel like once things get rolling, like, they're not going to stop. But like I said, I think I kind of just woke up and realized what he had for me and started to walk in that versus just doing what I think is right.
For other people who may be in that position, right, whether they have this feeling, they may have been fearful about leaving their job, or they are already, they have left. What's the thing that, like, what's the thing that you think we all need to keep in mind if we're in this position? Like, what's that thing that's going to keep you going through these next days? I know it's only day 2, but for day 3, day 4, like, what's keeping you going?
I mean, honestly, my faith. Like, if there's people listening that aren't faithful, I don't think I can help you. I mean, I'm so, like, to be honest, you know, like, it literally is my faith. Like, I have such a tight family. Like, I'm so close to my mom. I'm so close with my husband. And so I do lean on them for a lot. But there's been so many times that I have been shown that, like, they can only help you so much. You need to put your faith in God. And so, honestly, have faith. Like, I was just telling a girl, she was just asking me, like, I'm in that same position. I want to leave. What do I do? Have faith, pray, but not just, you know, praying, asking him to show you, what is my purpose? What can I do with this passion? How can I make this into a business? You know, I waited for a long time. Like, I thought he would just kind of show me. Like, I thought all these orders would come in and I would quit my job the next day. Like, I just was waiting for that moment. But instead, I should have asked him to just show me in another way. And once I realized that, he did show me in another way. Mm-hmm. You know, so kind of getting out of your own head and putting that faith in God.
During this time, have you had anybody who's been trying to negatively, like, I guess, you know, some negative energy? And in that case, how do you deal with negative energy?
I'll be honest with you. Not one person.
That's
not
good.
One person. But to bring it all back around again, it's got to be God, right? It has to be. Because not one time, not one person in my family, not one person I know, not one person in my husband's family, not one person at work has ever said, like, are you sure you want to do that? You sure you want to leave? This is like a cushy job in corporate. Like, you sure you want to, like, not once. But to tell you, you know, if they had, I'm not listening. I mean, you have to decide who you listen to, obviously. It's the same concept of, like, worrying too much about what people think about you. It's like, you have to focus on yourself and how you feel and the people around you that you love feel. You can't please everybody. So had somebody have said that to me, I honestly don't think it would have even fazed me.
You know what's so interesting about you saying that? Like, you know, I've been doing this podcast for almost 3 years. And when I first started it, I thought people's biggest challenges were going to be like the technical stuff, right? Like the tactical, the marketing, like the business plan, all that stuff that you could easily Google. And what I found is that sometimes it's those micro things, right? It's the intangible, it's the doubt, it's the fear, it's the lack of faith. That's what keeps a lot of dream drivers in park, right? Like, do you see that in your own circles or within your own, you know, people you've talked to, like those intangible things being the biggest challenges or the biggest obstacles along this road for many of us?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me and for other people I've talked to, getting in our own way is the number one issue.
Yep.
Like, you know, we have the resources. We clearly have the abilities. You know, we have the knowledge. It's literally getting in your own way. And that's what happened to me. I was in my own way. You know, I didn't want to quit because I was too worried about, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I'm worrying about my husband, but I was getting in my own way. And yeah, a lot of times, like, I was very doubtful. You know, I would go through these spells where I would cry and I just felt like, this is pointless. Like, why am I even doing this? But there's so many other problems to focus on. So you really do have to just, like, honestly, you have to make a decision. You have to say, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. But if I am, I'm going to do it all the way. I'm going to be faithful and I'm going to push through. So then when you have those days where you feel like you can't do it, you have to be aware. You have to be self-aware and be able to tell yourself, I do feel like crap today and I feel like I can't get through it. But I also know that I made this pact to myself that I am going to do it. So I'm going to let today pass. My mom has this saying, it's like, I think you have like 48 hours to get over yourself or something. So, like, you know, so it's like, all right, I'm going to be however I am today, but I'm not making any grand decisions. because I've already made my decision.
One of the things that I've heard throughout your story today, Ashley, is your husband, right? And it seems like he is such a big support to you. And it seems like you guys are also business partners as well, right? What is it like working with your spouse, and what kind of tips would you have for other people who may be, working with people who they have intimate relationships with, or whether it be sibling, family, whatever? Like, what's the big thing that you guys have to keep in mind in order to keep sane and make it work?
That this business is not everything, and it doesn't come before us. My husband is everything. Shout out to my husband. He's so calm, patient, God-fearing, encouraging. He's everything that I'm not. He fills in all the little holes that I have, but he does help a ton with the business, and we argue. We argue over the business, but we've done a lot to say we're not going to do that anymore. Like I said, we're very self-aware. So, it kind of gets to a point where, and when I say we argue, by the way, it's pretty much me arguing and then him just sitting there like listening and being like a little upset, but it's mainly me. But understanding that, and that we made this pact to God by getting married, and we've done like some marriage counseling and stuff like that. We're very close. And because we are, like, we can't let something else like a business get in between that. Does that make sense? It's the same way you would approach like family, like not letting your family get in between your relationship, right? Like everyone's had like family issues and they're like arguing over their family. It's like, hey, but me and you are good. Like me and you live here at the end of the day. When they all go away, it's me and you. So same with a business. Like, we'll never let this business get in between us. We'll never, are we going to like have a little spats about it? Sure. But I would give this whole business up for him. So there's no way I will let this come in between our marriage.
Do you guys believe in having big, wild goals or short-term to-dos? Like, when thinking about the future of the company?
Both. I think maybe for me, it's more short-term to-dos. I can't get past today if I can't get past today. So, for me, it's the short-term goals. But I do think about the big goals because people ask me all the time, Sometimes it's funny. People are like, oh, what's next? Like, and it's like, what? I didn't even think of that. Like, I just know next week I have to do this. I guess if I had to answer your question, for me, it's the short-term goals.
Is there anything that's scaring you now about the future? I mean, I'm not trying to, I always ask that because I feel like deep down, there's always something that we're worried about, even if we're not investing in it, but there's always like a little something there that's in the back of our head.
Yeah, everything. I mean, really, like, I just quit my job. Like, am I going to be able to pay the bills next week and next month and next year? Like, I don't know. I'm scared about that. Honestly, everything is scary. Every time I do something for the first time, we just went to a co-packer last week for the first time, and we're having someone else make the jam for us. Like, it's super scary. Like, me not being so hands-on, trying to get into some bigger retailers like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. Like, that's really, really scary. I mean, again, trying not to let yourself to succumb to that and just like focusing on what you want. Maybe that's a good advice. I'm going to go with that. Focus on what you want and not on the fear. And again, trying to remember that doesn't come from God. So if it's some fear like seeping in, okay, that's coming from like a negative source. Understanding that and really just trying to like fight against that.
You talked about retailers and partners. I see that you guys team up with Harlem Chocolate Factory. We actually featured them on the show. And like, how did that come about? Was that just like they liked your jam and wanted to include it as an ingredient?
So Jessica, who is the owner, who's awesome.
I love Jessica. She's so dope. But her New York accent, when she was on the show, I'm like, girl, you have such a New York Harlem accent. Okay.
She's so real. I mean, that's how she is in real life too. She's great. She's great. And she's really an inspiration. She opened her own store. Like, having a storefront is huge. You have to pay rent every month. Like, you have to make sure that you sell products so that you can pay the rent and keep the lights on. Like, that's a big deal. And so, I just look at her as this huge, huge inspiration. But, I believe the way she tells it is that she was trying to find some jam to put inside of her bonbons, and she wanted to use something local. So she like typed in like local jam or something like that. And we popped up, and then she like clicked on the site. And when she saw a picture of me and saw that I was Black, like she was like, I don't care. I'm going with this company. So she emailed me. We hopped on a call. And then we had a meeting, and I brought her some samples, and she was like, look, I already know I was going with you, but you brought this jam and it's fire, and like, let's do this. So I think she told me that the jam, I think it's called, what's the bonbon? I think it's called something on Lennox or something. It's like a peanut butter and jelly bonbon. She said it's like her number one biggest seller, and it has our spicy strawberry jam in there. So yeah, they're great, and I can't wait to work with them even more in the future.
That's so amazing, right? And it just goes to show, like, when you show up and you, as you said, like when you're in line with your purpose, other people will find you, right? Just like the Bon Appetit people, they decided to feature you. I'm such a believer in that, and I think that a lot of us, as you said, we really do have to keep that faith, because you never know where your next blessing will come from, right? But you have to show up and be there and be willing to accept it when it does.
Right. And that's huge what you just said. You have to show up, and you have to be willing to accept it.
Because some people would be wanting to bless you, and you'll deny it. Like, no, I'm not worthy of it. No, take it. Accept it. Accept it. Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people think they're not ready. Like, let's say, for example, like, I don't know what goes into it behind the scenes, but let's say, for example, you didn't have the jam or the inventory available yet to fulfill the order, whatever it was, right? You could have said, oh no, maybe next time. But even if you didn't, you would find a way to make it happen, right? I think that's where a lot of us we go wrong, is where we think our lack of means that we can't ever have. But I'm confusing myself. You get what I'm saying? Like, you know,
I do. Yeah. But I think you have to kind of, that's when you're getting in your own way. You have to just understand. One, you can stop and you can pray on it again and really try to get the answer from God. Mm-hmm. But also, like, there's going to be challenges. Like, there's going to be hurdles. He wants you to go another way sometimes. Like, he wants me to fulfill all these orders, right? But he doesn't want me to have all the inventory. He wants me to go in the kitchen and slave for 2 days and make the jam, so that I understand how important it is, because next month I'm going to have an even bigger article come out, and now I will be prepared, So he purposely had me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, he could have done that, right? Not allow me to have the inventory, but it wouldn't have been because he wants me to shut down this company. It would be because he wants me to understand that how important it is to keep this inventory, because bigger things are coming. I mean, you have to just be open to that and receptive. Like, if he doesn't want me to do this business, he's going to have to do something huge. Like, a tornado's going to have to come and like blow over the house, and all the jam goes in the like trash. And then makes you have amnesia
and you can't remember how to make jam anymore.
Right. Like that. Like, it has to be so deep for me to be like, okay, he doesn't want me to do this. But I can't take these little small things, because like, what in life is easy? Like, what perfect, great marriage doesn't have like issues? Like, people look up to Jay-Z and Beyonce, but this man been cheating on her for like 15 years on and on.
I mean, honestly, we don't even know, right? You never know.
He has been.
No, we don't know if it stopped. That's what I meant to say. Like, you don't even know. Yeah. They could just be living with it, and you never know.
I think the bigger point is that's between them, and they can work that out. But like, we always tend to look at people and think something, and it's like, we're being so silly by not being more realistic. Every time someone's like, they're such a perfect couple, or about anybody, like, you're so perfect or whatever. It's just like, you have to be realistic. Like, honestly, who is?
People are only showing you the highlight reel, right? That's what I always say about social media. I don't know about you, but like, as somebody who is like in this next stage of your business, like, for me, going with social media sometimes can be like a dream killer, right? Because you'll see other people doing things, or you'll see for me, it's like seeing other podcasts, and they're, featuring people that I might have reached out to and got rejected. But what I realized is they're only showing the highlight reel, and you can't covet I can't covet other people's success is, because I don't know what their journey looks like, right? And I don't know yet what my journey will look like. So that's something I would say to other dream drivers as well.
Yeah. And me too. And honestly, when I look at Instagram, I like make up little stories about things. Like if someone like looks really happy, I'm like, well, they probably have a dirty apartment, and it probably has roaches because they live in New York City. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It helps me. It helps me be like, nobody is perfect. No one. So like, you have to understand that. And that's why people are doing these like social media detoxes and stuff. Like, honestly, if I wasn't on social just for my business, I probably wouldn't be on social. Because I get it. Like, it's too much. And then also like, people know so much about you, and that's fine, but it's funny when I like get with a group of friends and I'm like, hey, let me tell you this like huge thing that happened. And they're like, oh, the Bon Appetit feature, and you quit your job. And I'm like, well, I guess we have nothing to talk about. Like, you already
And you
know.
made sweet potato mix today or yesterday.
I did. Exactly. See, like, you know what I mean? I could have just been like, hey, we're doing this new product. And you'd be like, oh, the sweet potato mix? I already know. And I just like, okay, I have nothing to tell you anymore. So that can get a little bit like, just understanding that happened is kind of like a little bit much. But no, I get it. You got to just be realistic. And I think people just got to really learn to focus more on themselves and their lives. Because even if like, Raina Campbell looks perfect on social, like at the end of the day, she doesn't live in this household. She's not working this business with me, like when I have kids, like, is she going to come help me take care of them? So it really doesn't matter what these other people are doing.
That is so true. Ashley, last question before our lightning round. What are some of your favorite resources that, have really helped you along your journey, whether it's business, personal, like what has just been something that you want to share with our dream drivers?
I mean, I know I've said this a million times, but I do pray a lot. So like the Bible app is a really good resource. They have like daily plans and things like that. So they even have stuff about like keeping God in your business. And, good ideas versus God ideas. So that's a really, really big one. Also for like entrepreneurs, we watch a lot of like entrepreneurial shows. So like The Prophet is a really good show. I mean, Shark Tank is great, but The Prophet's a little bit more in depth into the business. Yeah, I think those are like two big things that we do a lot.
Right. So let's go to our lightning round. Ashley, this part of the interview, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And remember, we're sticking with our dreams and drive metaphor. Okay.
Okay.
All right. The first word, park.
Boring.
Reverse.
Counterproductive.
Neutral.
Nothing.
And drive.
Push.
That's a good one. That is a good one. If you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So Ashley, tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Let's go with humility, perseverance, and God.
Those are also important, right? Which one do you think has had the biggest influence on your journey?
God. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but perseverance is right up there too. If you don't keep pushing, it's a wrap for you. It's not happening.
So where can our dream drivers find you online if they want to buy some jam, if they want to learn more about what you're up to? Let us know.
Yeah, so check out our website, tradestreetjamco.com. You can buy jam on there. Also check us out on Amazon. We sell on there as well. And if you're a Prime member, you get free shipping right to your door, 2 days. And then also check us out on Instagram at Trade Street Jam Co. And you can find out more about our story. I story a lot, so you'll see my beautiful face and what's going on with the business, like on a more day-to-day operational level. And then through our posts, you can get like recipes and videos and things like that.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashley. This has been so fun talking to you. I learned so much, and I'm so inspired by your message, as I know our dream drivers are as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. So that's a wrap for episode 174 with Ashley Rouse. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you enjoyed that episode, I ask that you please share it on social, share it with a friend, Remember to tag us. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. And if this is your first time listening, make sure that you are subscribed. And Dream Drivers, don't forget to enter our giveaway of the week. I hope you guys all are interested and want to enter to win a strawberry chipotle and fig jam and sweet potato biscuit mix from Trade Street Jam Co. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/win. That's dreamsanddrive.com/win to enter. One thing that you guys have not been doing, I'm going to ask you again, is to please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. Those iTunes ratings really help us. It helps us increase our rankings in the system. So go on over to iTunes, search Dreams and Drive, click on reviews, and then click on write a review, and just leave a heartfelt review, what you guys think about the show and what you would recommend to somebody else who's listening for the first time. I love to read reviews on the show, so there's a possibility that you can hear your review or the next episode. Don't forget to grab your Dreams and Drive gear. I really want to see more people this fall and this winter wearing Dreams and Drive hoodies, Dreams and Drive sweatshirts. So just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop, dreamsanddrive.com/shop to purchase something today. I appreciate that support. One thing that I've mentioned this week, I know I mentioned this in the Keys newsletter, and if you're not part of our newsletter list, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join to get that, is the importance of creating structure and routine. So one of the things that I've really suffered with since quitting my job is just creating like a daily structure, a daily routine for myself. I am somebody who's very process oriented, and having an outline, having clear goals set out is something that has really helped me. So one of the things that I transitioned to doing is setting daily goals and weekly goals. You know, every day when I wake up, I write a list of everything I need to do and one big goal for the day. And it has helped me tremendously. And also scheduling in breaks, giving myself lunch, really not working through the day, and also at the same time having an aim, having a purpose for the day has really inspired me, because let me tell you guys, this whole entrepreneurship thing can be really difficult if you don't have support systems, if you're not really taking care of yourself and also monitoring your activity. So I'd love to hear from you guys. I want to keep this conversation going, so let's do it in the Dreams and Drive Facebook group. So if you want to join our Dreams and Drive Mastermind, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/Facebook, or you can search Dream Driver Mastermind the next time you're logged on to Facebook, okay? As always, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again, episode 175. Bye, guys.